My Fellow Citizens of All Nations, 1984 by George Orwell. This book shows us the possible future of the planet where main powers have divided the world, and the only thing people know is despair and slavery. And our story starts with Winston, who is main character of this story. And Winston, just like everybody else, he works for the party. He is a member of the outer party, and he's involved in work of propaganda. But at the same time, he has deep disdain for the party. He does not like the party. He does not like the Big Brother at all. And he has this hatred toward Big Brother. He is wary of everyone. He is scared of everyone because he lives in a society where nobody can trust each other. Parents cannot trust their own children, or couple cannot trust each other. And in fact, in inner party and outer party, the marriages has to be approved by the party. So the marriage is not a matter of love, but sort of desire of a party. For the party, the purpose is to create an offspring for the party itself. So they have to get an approval if outer or inner party members want to get married. They cannot just get married because they love somebody. They have to be approved by the party. And Winston lives this life, he experiences it, and he has a wife, basically, which he hates because she was, as he explains, brainwashed by the party, and he disdained having any sort of sex with her or any sort of relationship because she was sort of the soulless, emotionless creature raised by the party, and what she really wanted was to procreate for the sake of the party. It was not like she had any genuine desire for Winston. In fact, Winston believed, and based on what he said, that she did not like Winston as well, but it was an order of the party, so she was sort of willing to contribute for the future of the party, and that's how she viewed her behavior. And of course, there's a couple moments at the beginning where Winston sort of has this desire toward beautiful women, but at the same time has deep disdain toward them because he knows that they are one of the fiercest followers of the party. And here is how Orwell puts it beautiful in a text, so I'm going to read it directly right now. Better than before, more aware, he realized why it was that he hated her. He hated her because she was young and pretty and sexless, because he wanted to go to bed with her and would never do so, because around her sweet, supple waist, which seemed to ask you to encircle it with your arms, there was only the idiot's scarlet sash, aggressive symbol of chastity. So this sort of narrative explains a conflict between human desire and what type of society party wants to impose. Party wants a controlled society, and party pays close attention to inner party members and outer party members, and other people be outside of that. They are basically plebs. They are nobodies. They are just sort of they are compared to something as same as animals or dogs or something like that. They are unimportant. Even outer party members don't necessarily respect the pleb or the vast majority. So Winston sort of in a few pages inside in the book, we see this famous and well quoted word: war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And once you read it, you are like, is this a joke or is this some sort of interpretation? But no, you realize that the party really promotes this type of ideology. Party really promotes the hatred, this sort of madness. And basically Winston sort of wants to escape. He finds this place which turns out to be actually a hidden place created by party, and there is this old man which is actually a real agent of the thought police. And I understand this in this world, in the Orwellian world, the thought police, the thought itself, even a rebellious thought, is a death itself. It equals direct death. Even you can just work your entire life for the party, you're very tired, but even if you think against the party, then you are a criminal. You deserve death. You think about the party in the wrong way. Thought itself is considered a crime. Even a moment of outburst, and your children, let's say you're in a kitchen and you say something, oh damn the party, and your children hear you. Your children go to a police and security department, and they basically sort of reveal what you said, and you are arrested, and your children are promoted to be the agents for the party. There are all sorts of activity. And Winston has this deep regret because he had a sister and a mother, but he explains what type of awful and despicable child he was. And at the same time, he was sort of a very bad kid, let's say. Let's put it mild. He was awful child. He had very awful behavior, and eventually he doesn't remember what happens to exactly to his mother and young sister, but they disappear. He suspects that my sister could be arrested, could be sold to prostitution or whatever, because majority of people live on rations and live on objective poverty. And even though the party hates certain things, but the party allows prostitution and etc. Party wants it. Party wants people to express themselves somehow, but party does not want inner party or outer party members to really be sexually active or enjoy anything, because for them sex desire is related to rebellion. And here where Julia comes from. First of all, Winston thought mistakenly, or maybe not necessarily mistakenly, it's a confusing Julia is a very confusing character. She apparently fell in love with Winston, which is bizarre, really bizarre. Like, why? And basically she's this sexually free woman, and she just like Winston works for the party, and she attends party gatherings, and she's the one that, for example, hanging of sort of criminals is very popular, and she's one of those that appears and screams, "Kill the party, destroy this party enemy." But at the same time, she's very sexually free, and she loves to enjoy sex, and she loves to fuck, and she loves orgasm, and she loves all sorts of things that's related to self pleasure. And this is her way of revolting against the party, as she explains later on. And Winston and her, they love each other, and they gather in this place basically where they meet each other, which is a very shitty place. There are rats, it's hot, like, the living conditions of people is unbearable. People are on rations and etc. Like, living conditions of people is not good. And Julia is a free-spirited woman. She wants to basically live her life, enjoy her life, and just express herself through love. For her, this is very interesting, and she basically reveals her past to Winston, and Winston has kind of interesting reaction to it, because she tells Winston that she was, I believe, 16 when she had the first relationship with affair, let's say, with inner party member, and I think this inner party member basically committed suicide or something like that. And Winston delights in that story. He wished for her to have had relationship with tens of thousands of men, inner party members, especially because for him it meant that the party was crumbling from inside. And she was very expressive of her story, and he was also very happy listening to it. I mean, he did not care that he was delighted. For him, it meant that there are cracks inside the system, and it is great news for Winston. But later he also develops a jealous feeling toward Julia, and he sometimes wonders whether she is cheating on him or not, and etc. That also part of human emotion, and it's there's a very complicated relationship in them. So Winston still wants to rebel, and Winston has this guy called O'Brien. O'Brien appears to be a very unimportant character. Winston thinks that O'Brien is enemy of the party. There is this cult-like figure, the Emmanuel Goldstein, which I believe was probably invented by party itself, and it was done for the sake of hope, to create the false hope and to create sort of a sick person that those who want to rebel will follow. Now, one mention about O'Brien is that Winston sort of believes that O'Brien is also his member, so he convinces Julia, and both of them visit O'Brien, and there is O'Brien's servant because he's a member of inner party, and Julia and Winston are both outer party members. So there we see the difference between lifestyle of inner party member and outer party member. They basically taste wine and stuff that outer party members can only dream of. So there is a big difference between lifestyle. An inner party member and outer party member can afford. In fact, outer party members eat shitty food, live shitty life, they are overworked, underpaid, and etc. They live in a miserable condition, yet at the same time they work for the propaganda to convince everyone and convince themselves that they are sort of living in an amazing society, and everything is cynical in sort of society. Everything is based on fundamental evil, which is genuinely despicable system where people, ordinary people, and just outer party members suffer, and inner party members are also afraid of each other in a certain sense, and nobody trusts no one. Basically, the Big Brother is also a cult-like figure at that point. So they swear alliance to this idea of to be enemy of the party, Julia and Winston, and it's very interesting that everything starts to feel off from that point on. Like the OAS, the a weird book they give Winston that as if it's written by Emmanuel Goldstein or something like that. It's like started to have this stuff that this is a weird book. There's nothing new here, and certain stuff, even in that so-called Emmanuel Goldstein's work, was very twisted, and in fact, it was not true at all. And it could. And I remember I was criticizing it. I didn't sort of understood why it was so twisted, and certain words were mismatched. And in fact, it was visible that something was off about it. So during that period, they are preparing for a hate week, and there is something very interesting, by the way, which shows different insights in Julia's personality. Julia is very tired. She works for the party, and she feels that her pleasure is sort of way to rebel against the party, but she cannot imagine that party will be overthrown, while Winston believes that party can be overthrown. And it's very interesting that Julia makes this observation. Sometimes here and there bombs drop and people die, mostly plebs and etc. And Julia makes this very interesting observation that, and he tells Winston that, do you know, Winston, those bombs that are falling and those people that are dying, it might be done by the party itself. It might not even be the enemy. In fact, enemy might don't even exist. The party might not even be in war with anyone. They could be launching those rockets that fall in cities and kill these people. They don't care. And Winston is shocked with this observation, and I was shocked as well, because such a profound insight. Of course, the party would do that. There's no doubt the party would easily do that. It's not like it's its enemy to drop bombs in its own capital and in its own cities. And she has this very keen observation that it could be an inner job. It could be done by the party for different reasons. And it's interesting that the party is so paranoid that they create these places where couples might meet, and there are cameras in it as well. So basically, they make this observation that I shared with you, and they basically make this vow, and basically they vow something very disgusting. They vow that they will not stop in anything. They will sell their body and etc. They do everything to harm the party, to somehow destroy the party. And this is a very bizarre war, because then what's the difference between you and the party? But they're blinded by hatred. Mostly Winston is the one that's driving this doom, and he's offering, by the way, Julia to break up with him, but Julia does not do so. I think Julia is one of those. She was and is much more realistic in that situation than Winston. And basically, everything collapses when it turns out that the hotels they're staying in, and that old man that's there, and I struggle to recall his name. It was Charrington or something like that. Turns out to be a member of the thought police, and he was just disguised as an old man that has wife and etc. But the real whole hotel was set up, and this is where usually they met and they talked. And turns out as well that the O'Brien character, which we thought was against the party, is actually one of the highest figures in the party, and he actually works for the party. And it turns out that everything is set up that started years ago, and the party spent enormous resources on Winston, who is a very unimportant person. He's an outer party member. He works for the party. He might have a rebellious thought, but the party dedicates enormous amount of resources for Winston, to just spy on him and understand him. And no matter what Winston did, or whatever rebellious thoughts he had, whatever rebellious stuff he was written in his own house, in his own room, everything was sort of understood and watched by party. And Winston is shocked, and I am shocked, and I believe everyone was shocked that read this book, because it was so unexpected, because you had this expectation something good might come out of it, something good might happen, but no. And after that starts torture, despicable torture of Winston. Of course, Julia was also taken and beaten, but we don't see how Julia was tortured specifically, but we can guess. Party has no bottom line, and party is dedicated to eradicate whatever rebellious thing is inside of a person that makes that person rebel. So we could only imagine that despicable suffering Julia had to go through, just based on what Winston went. I think basically, let me explain to how Winston was tortured. He was beaten. He was abused. He was afraid of rats. Rat was used against him to basically break his love for Julia. And party is very interesting, that unimportant thing. And here appears this O'Brien. I don't know how to describe O'Brien. I think O'Brien is a coward and a very broken, spineless individual that delights in power, and he is a direct result of a negative selection that was turned on by the party. And O'Brien understands himself very well. He's a broken person. He thinks that he's somehow immortal. He's sort of a part of something grand, while all this is just nonsense. He's not anything grand, but a spineless, cowardly creature that probably was tortured by party. I would assume he was tortured himself. And he basically argues with Winston and does all sort of despicable things to him. And there is this human emotion where somebody beats you up. It was like abused beyond belief, and you think that slightest kindness that such abuser shows toward you, it's sort of a sign of a loving father figure doing something nice toward you. This is what type of influence Winston is under, and O'Brien becomes a god for Winston at that point, because Winston understands that O'Brien has all the power, and they want to simply mentally break him. And Winston tries to argue with O'Brien, and O'Brien explains himself. He thinks that he is Big Brother. This is O'Brien's greatest delusion. He thinks that he himself is the Big Brother. He sees himself as a Big Brother, and he explains that other empires claimed righteousness, but what we want is we are deeply corrupt, deeply evil, but we don't care. We don't hide it from ourselves. We know what we are. And I think O'Brien understands what they are, and because the book that so-called Winston received, written by Goldstein, it was written by O'Brien mainly, and O'Brien understands everything. O'Brien understands what party is. O'Brien understands that party is not needed, really. But they are evil, so they want absolute control, and he understands that society will be far better off without the party. But he does not want it. He wants absolute control. He's just a twisted individual. He understands everything that is wrong with party. He is not those inner party members, for example, that has delusion that the party is righteous somehow. No, he understands that party abuses people, that party is evil, party tortures people, kills them, makes them disappear, does unspeakable evil. It's really difficult to express in the words how evil and utterly bankrupt the parties and parties' ideologies, how despicable it is, really. And they abuse Winston, and they want to break his mind, and they do it. They break his mind. Winston simply goes insane, not insane in that sense that it is expressed directly, but his mind is completely shattered. But even after that torture, they cannot remove the hatred of the party from Winston. Even after that, there is a hatred, but O'Brien understands that hatred cannot be removed completely, and he tells him, before you die, you will be a greatest supporter of the party. But before the bullet destroys you completely, you will have that anguish of hatred toward the party, but it will be too late. Because your words and thoughts will be, for the party, everything is given, I deserve what is done to me. But at the same time, on the last seconds, the hatred that you have suppressed will explode again toward the party, but it will be too late. And Winston still hates the party, but it is so suppressed that he cannot do anything. He acts from a wrong self. His true self is suppressed in his unconscious somewhere. While what party wants, party enforces it. And this is one of the physical humiliations O'Brien uses against Winston, is that, hey Winston, after years probably of torture, God knows how much time has passed, O'Brien shows Winston mirror after they've starved him, took all his teeth out, basically destroyed the man, like everyday beating and utter abuse, and they show himself in the mirror and they're like, look at yourself, what are you? You think you are better than us? You are inferior, look at us. And this sort of thing breaks Winston, because it is really painful, and it is like when you read that, it's really difficult to not feel this emotion of deep sort of disappointment and anger, and first anger and then just disappointment in all this thing. And Winston, as I said, eventually breaks, and after he breaks after they break his mind, they say that whatever party tells you is the truth. If party tells you 2 + 2 = 5, then +2 = 5. And once Winston's mind was completely broken and deformed, Winston sort of wants to write something, and I want to just read what Winston writes. Freedom is slavery. 2 and 2 makes 5, and God is power. I think this is a real message after all those trauma, Winston says, and what party wants to convey. Winston meets Julie after torture. They have this meeting, a random meeting, and they no longer love each other because both of them understand that they betrayed each other. During those despicable tortures, you basically won't pass that suffering to other person, only if you don't suffer and let that person suffer. So it's disgusting. Why such a genuinely weird book? And I unheard of for outer party members to afford. Even coffee and any things was considered luxury by Julie and Winston. So it is this double face, this double lie of O'Brien, which is interesting in the sense that not only O'Brien is a pitiful creature, he is the champion of a negative selection. a champion of negative selection, and can call that person a person that's was produced by the party, for the party itself, the perfect party member, a midman. This sort of book made me realize that we have to appreciate things, and certain things need to be taken care of, defended, and taken very, 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 very seriously. Have a nice day.